Cameron, I want to go back to something else you talked about as well, and that is, you mentioned dock scheduling, which I think for a lot of shippers tend to overlook in kind of its role and importance. So it's not kind of top of the priority list, but I think in a lot of cases it's a very critical part of the process. I mean, why was this capability important for you guys, and what benefits does it provide?
Sure. So if you look at our organization, we have a few local, we have quite a few local warehouses. And so prior to having a dock scheduler, a carrier would have to call the warehouse to make an appointment. But the corporate office wanted to know when the trucks were coming in. So we'd have shared spreadsheets, and it was very confusing. You think about a 2-pick load, a carrier might call the first warehouse and get an appointment, and they call the second warehouse and an appointment doesn't work for them. So with the dock scheduler, a carrier can go online, make an appointment at both facilities, escalate to us if there's any issues, but they can do all of that work without having to have clerks sitting at every warehouse waiting for them to call. So some of the benefits we've seen, like I said, is not having to have the clerks that are taking the calls. But another big benefit has been less chances for confusion and detention. And so there's recording, tracking capabilities to know when the carrier made the appointment and what appointment they made for. So it takes out all that doubt out of the process.
Now, with kind of the visibility that we just talked about, when you look at things like, detention, charges and things like that, is that something you've seen a positive improvement on as a result of putting the dock scheduling in?
Yeah, we've seen a large reduction in detention. And it's tough to be a driver in this industry right now at this time. And our drivers the drivers that come to us seem to be much happier because they know when their appointment is, and we take care of them at that time, and everything's a lot clearer.
That's a great point there. I mean, there's so much. One of the things that the industry has talked a lot about over the past few years is in terms of being a carrier-friendly shipper, right? Because at the end of the day, particularly, you never know when capacity is going to get really tight again, right? And certainly it is tight in some industries and some lanes already, right? So being a shipper of choice for carriers is very important.
Yeah, we also use the dock scheduling tool when a carrier wants to have us load a drop trailer. They want to indicate that they want it preloaded. They can use that dock scheduler to indicate that to us. So it's really helped us become a shipper of choice.
Great. Mike, any thoughts on dock scheduling, what you're seeing there from other shippers?
Yeah, first of all, I apologize for interrupting. When capacity gets tight, we're predicting that 2017 shippers are going to see capacity tighten up. The second thing with the dock scheduler, and Cameron and his team there have been very good about this, in terms of outlining what was important for them. One of the key things that we take a look at is, if I walk into a company and say, tell me what your production line is going to look like for the day, people can give me an idea at the start of the day what their production line is going to look like. So the thought there with the dock scheduler is, if I were to walk onto your docks, tell me what your day is going to look like. What are we expecting to get in? Recently, I was with a company, and it's got millions of dollars coming into their facilities, and it's a bit chaotic. And one of the reasons it's chaotic is because they're relying on ASNs from their suppliers that they have to aggregate, and they're doing this in a manual environment. Once the data is aggregated, then they have to develop a game plan that basically says, okay, here's what we expect to see. With the dock scheduler, I can walk in at the beginning of the day, and I think, Cameron, perhaps you could confirm this, at the beginning of the day, you know what to expect. And there's a huge advantage associated with being able to plan for that, as well as then to also determine, if there's an exception that comes up, a carrier isn't going to make their window, what are some of the alternatives that we have in order to satisfy the customer. So the dock scheduler is great, but it also highlights things that, I can go to exceptions rather than have to look at 35, 40 loads. What I can focus on are the 2 or 3 loads that are going to represent a challenge for my team that day. Is that what you're saying, Cameron, as well?
That's exactly what we're seeing at Idahoan. And another thing is, directors at the corporate office can look at the dock manager and know how all the facilities are operating. If it's 12 o'clock, you can look at all the facilities and see, are we behind or are we ahead of schedule, and making sure that we get the work done for the day.
Great. Yeah, like I said, this is an area that I think historically has been overlooked by a lot of shippers, but I think more and more companies are starting to pay attention to it because it is such an integral part of the process.